In a small, quiet town in the United States, 12-year-old Michael lived an ordinary life with his parents and younger sister. Like most families, they struggled with the weight of growing uncertainty, rising prices, divisive communities, and a world that felt increasingly unpredictable. One winter evening, the unimaginable happened. Michael collapsed at the dinner table. His parents panicked, desperately calling for help, as the boy lay motionless, his heart no longer beating. Doctors fought to revive him, but it was too late. For nearly 10 minutes, Michael was clinically dead. Yet in those few minutes, he experienced something so profound it would change his family and the world forever. He returned from the brink with a chilling yet hopeful message straight from Jesus himself. A warning about 2025, a glimpse of what's to come, and a lesson on how humanity can save itself before it's too late. As Michael recounts his experience, the first thing he remembers after his collapse is floating weightlessly above his own body. The surreal sight of himself, lying still on the floor, sent chills through him. He could hear his mother's cries, his father's frantic phone calls, and his little sister whispering prayers she had learned in Sunday school. Yet he felt no pain or fear. Instead, there was a calmness that words could hardly describe. The world seemed distant, muffled, and unreal, as though he had been lifted into a higher plane of existence. He could see his parents kneeling next to him, tears streaming down their faces, but he couldn't touch them. A strange force, gentle but firm, pulled him upward. Michael describes what happened next as being pulled through a tunnel, a shimmering vortex of light that felt warm and inviting. He recalls hearing faint whispers echoing around him, almost as if they were coming from unseen souls. They weren't scary voices. They were calm, soothing, and full of purpose. "You are not done yet," one voice said. Another added, "You must remember what you see." At first, he was confused. Why him? What was happening? As the light grew brighter, Michael realized he was being carried to a place unlike anything he had seen before. The darkness faded, replaced by a vast golden realm that sparkled like sunlight on water. A feeling of complete peace washed over him, erasing all fears and confusion. He wanted to stay there forever. But in the background, a sense of urgency grew. Michael explains that while this heavenly place offered tranquility, something important awaited him, something he needed to see and share with the world. "There was a reason I was pulled away," he later told his family. "It was not random. I had to see something. I had to bring a message." At this point, Michael describes a strong presence drawing closer. Though he couldn't see a face immediately, he felt it. A profound sense of unconditional love and authority. The light grew brighter, and he knew he was about to witness something divine. The voices stopped, and the space grew silent, except for his own heartbeat, steady and loud, though he didn't understand why. The journey had just begun. Michael wasn't sure where he was going, but every instinct told him it was important. As the warmth of the light wrapped around him, all fear melted away. A powerful force was guiding him toward a truth that would forever change his view of life, faith, and the world. For Michael, the experience was just the start of something bigger, a message for humanity in 2025 that Jesus himself would reveal. Michael's voice softens when he begins to describe what happened next. Emerging from the tunnel of light, he found himself standing in a breathtaking place that can only be described as heaven. Golden clouds floated softly beneath his feet, and the air itself shimmered with an otherworldly glow. The sky was brilliant and endless, yet it carried no weight. Every breath filled him with a sense of peace and joy he had never known before. "I felt like I belonged there," Michael explains. "It was home." As Michael stood marveling at the beauty of the place, he noticed a figure walking toward him. At first, the light surrounding this figure was so radiant that he couldn't make out any details. But then, as the figure grew closer, he realized it was Jesus. Jesus appeared as both humble and powerful, wearing flowing white robes and emanating a light so pure that Michael had to shield his eyes. Yet, despite his overwhelming presence, Michael felt no fear, only love. Jesus smiled warmly and spoke to him in a voice that carried both authority and kindness. "Michael, my child," he said, "you are here because you have been chosen to carry an important message." Jesus placed his hand on Michael's shoulder, and suddenly visions began to appear all around him. Michael saw scenes of earth, cities, forests, oceans, but something was wrong. Fires raged, floods swept through towns, and people were fighting. The scenes were heartbreaking, and Michael began to cry. "Why are you showing me this?" he asked Jesus. Jesus replied, "These are visions of a world that has forgotten love, faith, and unity. But there is still time. You must tell them to prepare, to turn their hearts back to God and to one another. Only through faith, kindness, and forgiveness can they overcome what lies ahead." Michael nodded, though his heart felt heavy. Jesus reassured him, "Do not be afraid. You are never alone. I am always with you." Before leaving, Jesus placed his hand over Michael's heart, and a warmth filled his entire body. He felt renewed, strong, and ready to return, no matter how hard it would be to share what he had seen. The visions that Jesus showed Michael were unlike anything he had ever seen. Cities once full of life appeared dark and abandoned. Buildings crumbled, streets were flooded, and people ran for shelter against powerful storms. Fires raged in places Michael recognized, familiar states and cities across the United States. In one vision, Michael saw a massive hurricane sweeping through the southern states, devastating entire communities. In another, he watched a wildfire consume forests and homes. Families cried out for help, their faces filled with fear. Jesus explained, "These challenges are not punishments. They are calls to wake up, to reconnect with faith, unity, and kindness." Michael also saw visions of division, people turning against one another, spreading anger and hatred instead of love. It was a warning that society's greatest threat was not external, but internal. "People have forgotten what matters most," Jesus said, "but they can still change." After witnessing the heartbreaking visions of Earth's future, Michael was overwhelmed with sadness and fear. He turned to Jesus and asked, "Is it too late? Can we change what is coming?" Jesus' expression softened, and he placed a hand on Michael's shoulder, speaking with a voice filled with compassion and hope. "No, my child, it is not too late," Jesus said gently. "Every challenge you have seen can be overcome. Redemption is always possible for those who seek it." At that moment, Michael was shown a new series of visions, this time filled with light and hope. He saw communities coming together after the storms had passed, rebuilding homes, supporting one another, and praying as one. Neighbors who had once been strangers embraced like family. People began to share what they had: food, shelter, kindness, and miracles unfolded before their eyes. In one scene, a family who had lost everything in a fire stood hand in hand, surrounded by others who offered them food and warmth. Despite their loss, they smiled, grateful for the love that surrounded them. Jesus explained, "This is the power of unity. Love is the antidote to fear, and faith is the bridge to salvation." Michael saw hospitals where once sick patients began to heal miraculously. Doctors and nurses prayed before surgeries, and the outcomes stunned everyone. In another vision, communities gathered in fields to pray together under the sky. As they prayed, dark clouds parted and sunlight poured down, bringing a sense of renewal to the land. "Prayer is powerful," Jesus said. "It opens hearts, shifts energies, and invites miracles." Jesus also showed Michael individuals who had transformed their lives. People who had been consumed by anger or hopelessness found peace through faith and forgiveness. Former enemies became friends, families reconciled after years of conflict, and individuals who had felt lost discovered a new sense of purpose. "Tell them," Jesus urged, "that each person carries the power to heal not only themselves, but the world. Through acts of love, kindness, and forgiveness, they will write a new future." Michael realized that the visions of destruction were not a punishment, but a test, a call for humanity to change its course. Jesus explained that the storms, fires, and conflicts were opportunities for growth and transformation. "Adversity reveals the strength of the human spirit," he said. "It is in the darkest moments that people have the chance to shine their brightest." Finally, Jesus reminded Michael of the importance of personal faith. "Each soul must turn inward and reconnect with me. Faith does not mean a life without hardship, but it gives you the strength to endure, to overcome, and to bring light to the darkness." As the final vision faded, Michael felt a deep sense of peace and hope. The world could change. People could rise above their challenges. The future was not written in stone. It was shaped by the choices of humanity. Jesus smiled at Michael and said, "Share this message with courage and love. Remind them that I am with them, always." Michael felt the warmth of those words wrap around him like a shield, giving him the strength he needed to return. When the visions ended, Michael felt torn. Heaven felt like home, a place of peace, light, and endless love. He didn't want to leave, but deep down, he knew his purpose was not yet complete. He turned to Jesus, tears in his eyes, and asked, "Do I have to go back?" Jesus smiled kindly and said, "Your time here is not yet. The world needs you, Michael. You are my messenger. Share what you have seen, and do not be afraid." Michael looked around one last time, taking in the beauty of heaven. He heard the faint sound of angels singing, a melody so pure it seemed to heal his very soul. Jesus placed his hand over Michael's heart, and a surge of warmth filled him from head to toe. "You will remember everything," Jesus said. "When you return, you will carry my love with you. Even when the world doubts you, I will guide you. You are not alone." Michael nodded, though it was the hardest thing he had ever done. As Jesus stepped back, Michael felt himself being gently pulled away from the golden realm. The light around him began to fade, replaced by a feeling of weight and heaviness. The voices and songs grew faint until all was silent. Suddenly, Michael felt a jolt. His body filled with air, his lungs gasped for breath, and he awoke to the sound of frantic voices and beeping machines. Doctors surrounded him, stunned and amazed. "He's back," one of them cried. His mother wept with joy, hugging him tightly as tears streamed down her face. Michael looked around the hospital room, disoriented but calm. He could still feel the warmth of Jesus' touch on his heart. The days that followed were filled with confusion and disbelief. When Michael shared his story, some people dismissed it as a hallucination, but his words carried a wisdom far beyond his years, and those who truly listened could feel the truth in them. Michael didn't argue with doubters. He simply shared his message as Jesus had asked. "It's not too late," he told anyone who would listen. "The future can still be changed. Jesus said we must love each other, forgive one another, and turn back to faith. Only then will we overcome what's coming." His family believed him completely. They saw the change in Michael, a newfound calm, confidence, and purpose. He was no longer the same boy who had collapsed that day. He carried an unshakable faith and a message of hope that would inspire countless others. When Michael opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was the worried yet hopeful face of his mother leaning over him. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered his name softly, almost as if she couldn't believe he had come back. Doctors and nurses stood frozen for a moment, staring at the monitor that now showed a steady, rhythmic heartbeat. "It's impossible," one doctor murmured under his breath. He was gone. But Michael was not gone. He was very much alive. And though his body felt heavy and weak, his mind was clear. He knew exactly where he had been and why he had returned. As his mother hugged him tightly, his voice, though faint, broke the silence. "Mum, I saw Jesus." Those words sent a wave of stillness through the room. The doctors exchanged glances, and the nurses murmured quietly to each other. To many, it seemed like the ramblings of a child who had been through trauma. But Michael's mother held on to every word. "What did he say?" she asked, her voice trembling with emotion. Michael took a slow, deep breath and began to speak. He recounted the tunnel of light, the beauty of heaven, and the powerful figure of Jesus. He spoke of the visions, of storms, floods, fires, and communities breaking apart. But most importantly, he shared the message Jesus had given him. "Jesus said the world can still change," Michael explained, "but we have to love each other again. We have to forgive and help one another, or things will get worse." At first, the people in the room weren't sure what to make of it. A boy who had been dead for nearly 10 minutes was now alive, recounting detailed visions of heaven and a divine warning. Some believed him immediately, moved by the calm conviction in his voice. Others dismissed it as the result of oxygen deprivation to the brain. As Michael's story continued to spread, something extraordinary began to happen. People across the United States and even other parts of the world started experiencing unexplainable events, small miracles that seemed to confirm Michael's message. Those who listened and took action found their lives changing in profound ways. In one instance, a single mother who had been struggling financially heard Michael's speech online. Inspired, she began praying daily, asking for strength and guidance. Days later, she received an unexpected job offer that allowed her to provide for her children. "It was as if God heard me for the first time," she said. Michael's message reminded me to believe again. Communities affected by natural disasters also shared stories of hope and resilience. In one town, hit by severe flooding, neighbors who had previously kept to themselves came together to rebuild homes, provide food, and comfort one another. "We're stronger when we're united," said one volunteer. "It's like Michael said, love can heal anything. Even those who had doubted Michael's story began to take notice as more and more people shared similar experiences. Miraculous recoveries, unexpected opportunities, and moments of deep spiritual connection became common among those who chose to reflect on their lives and turn back to faith. Another powerful moment occurred when a man who had lost faith after the death of his wife decided to visit a church for the first time in years. As he sat in the pew, he silently prayed for a sign. The following Sunday, he stumbled upon a community service event where strangers welcomed him with open arms. "It was like I'd been asleep for years, and I finally woke up," he said. Michael's words were true. God hasn't abandoned us, we just stopped listening. These events spread like ripples across the country, inspiring others to take action. Prayer groups grew larger, churches overflowed with worshippers, and people began sharing their own stories of spiritual awakening. Social media became flooded with messages of hope, tagged with phrases like "Change starts with us" and "Jesus is always near." What made Michael's message so powerful was its simplicity. He didn't speak of grand gestures or impossible acts. Instead, he focused on the small, everyday actions that make a difference. Forgiving someone who has wronged you, helping a neighbor in need, and reconnecting with faith. Jesus told me that even the smallest act of love can change the world, Michael said. People who had spent years feeling hopeless or disconnected began to experience a shift. Families who had been broken by anger and resentment reunited. Individuals who had been trapped in cycles of fear and negativity found peace. The miracles weren't always grand, but they were real, and for those who experienced them, they were life-changing. Even skeptics couldn't ignore the impact of Michael's story. Reporters, scientists, and theologians tried to explain what had happened, but no one could deny the effect it was having on people's lives. "Whether you believe in heaven or not, you can't argue with the hope this boy has given people," one journalist remarked. Michael remained humble through it all, always pointing back to Jesus. "This isn't about me," he would say. "It's about all of us coming together. Jesus gave us a second chance, and it's up to us to use it." The signs and miracles that followed Michael's return were undeniable. They were proof that his message was not just a story, it was a call to action. People who chose to listen and believe found themselves transformed, their faith renewed, and their hearts filled with hope. As one pastor put it, Michael reminded us of something we all knew deep down, but had forgotten. Love is stronger than fear, and faith can move mountains. In the weeks and months that followed Michael's return, his message spread far beyond what anyone could have imagined. Churches saw an influx of people seeking faith and connection. Communities that had once been divided began to come together, working to create positive change. Michael's words had ignited a movement of hope, unity, and action. For Michael's family, the experience was both a miracle and a profound responsibility. His parents, who had been overwhelmed with grief during his collapse, now saw their son as a messenger of God's love. They watched in awe as their quiet, ordinary boy spoke with a wisdom and confidence that could only be described as divine. Michael's story became a symbol of hope in a world filled with uncertainty. His message reached people of all walks of life, rich and poor, young and old, believers and non-believers. He didn't speak to divide or judge, he spoke to inspire. Jesus loves everyone, Michael would remind people. It doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. He's waiting for you to turn back to him. The impact of Michael's message was far-reaching. Schools began teaching kindness and empathy as core values. Families prioritized time together, focusing on love and forgiveness. Communities started organizing volunteer efforts, helping those in need and supporting one another through difficult times. But Michael's message was not without its challenges. Some people doubted him, dismissing his experience as the product of a child's imagination. Others ridiculed his visions, claiming they were fear-mongering. Yet Michael never wavered. He simply repeated the words Jesus had spoken to him. "Do not be afraid. Love one another, and I will be with you." As time went on, people began to see the truth in Michael's warning and the hope in his message. The storms he had described, the natural disasters, the conflicts, the uncertainty, began to unfold in ways that were impossible to ignore. Yet those who had listened and prepared found themselves stronger, more united, and more resilient. Michael's story became a legacy, a reminder that no matter how dark the world may seem, there is always light to guide the way. His message was clear: the future is not fixed. We have the power to change it, but we must start now. People across the country and around the world began sharing his words, spreading love and faith like a flame that could not be extinguished. Michael reminded us that hope isn't lost, one woman said. We just have to believe in it again. For Michael, the journey was far from over. Though he had returned from death with a powerful message, he knew his work had only just begun. He continued to speak, to inspire, and to remind people of what truly matters: faith, love, and unity. In the end, Michael's story was not just about visions or warnings. It was about the power of redemption, the beauty of hope, and the reminder that even in the darkest times, we are never alone. Jesus' words echoed in the hearts of all who listened. Love one another, and I will be with you always. Michael's legacy lives on as a testament to the strength of the human spirit, the power of faith, and the possibility of a better future for all.